The Sunday morning in Hawaii. The sun had just begun to rise above the Pacific. The waters of Pearl Harbor shimmered in golden light. Calm and undisturbed, on the decks of American battleships, sailors cleaned, joked, and wrote letters to loved ones. Others were still asleep, enjoying what felt like a peaceful morning. But hidden beyond the horizon, an armada was already in motion. A storm of steel and fire was coming. Within minutes, this quiet harbor would become a blazing inferno. Within hours, the fate of nations would be reshaped forever. For years, the Empire of Japan had marched on a path of conquest. In 1931, it seized Manchuria. In 1937, it unleashed war upon China, bringing devastation to cities like Nanjing. By 1940, Japanese forces advanced deeper into Asia, hungry for resources, oil, rubber, iron, the lifeblood of modern war. The United States, determined to resist this expansion, responded with crippling economic sanctions. Oil shipments were cut off, scrap metal and steel were withheld. For Japan, these measures were suffocating. Without fuel, its navy would grind to a halt. Without iron, its war machine would wither. Tokyo's leaders faced a choice: retreat or strike. Under the guiding hand of Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Japan chose the path of boldness and destruction. Yamamoto understood the gamble. He warned, "If I am ordered to fight, I will run wild for 6 months, but after that, I can guarantee nothing." His plan was simple yet audacious: cripple the American Pacific Fleet with a sudden, overwhelming blow, destroy their battleships, demoralize their people, seize Asia before the United States could recover. The target, Pearl Harbor. In late November 1941, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers, escorted by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers, slipped silently into the stormy waters of the North Pacific. On board were more than 350 aircraft, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, level bombers, and deadly Zero fighters. The fleet maintained radio silence. No signals betrayed their location. Sailors whispered in hushed tones. The mission was cloaked in secrecy. Their orders: strike without warning, unleash destruction, then vanish back into the ocean. As dawn approached on December 7th, pilots prepared. Some tied white scarves around their foreheads, symbols of sacrifice. Engines roared to life on the carrier decks. At 6 a.m., waves of aircraft lifted into the sky, their wings glinting in the morning light. They banked south toward Oahu, toward an unsuspecting American fleet still at anchor. At 7:55 a.m., the first bombs fell. The air split with the thunder of explosions. Torpedo bombers skimmed the waves, releasing deadly payloads into the harbor. Dive bombers screamed downward, sirens howling, dropping armor-piercing bombs upon battleships below. USS Arizona, pride of the Pacific Fleet, took a direct hit. The bomb pierced her forward magazine. In a single deafening blast, the ship erupted in a fireball so vast it shattered steel and hurled men into the sea. Over 1,100 sailors died instantly.
entombed within the sinking wreck. Nearby, USS Oklahoma rolled onto her side after multiple torpedo strikes, trapping hundreds of crew inside. USS West Virginia and USS California were torn apart by flames. USS Nevada tried to make a desperate run for open water, but was struck repeatedly, forced to beach herself to avoid sinking in the channel. On the airfields, destruction was just as merciless. Japanese Zeros strafed the runways, cutting down planes where they sat, wings folded, fuel tanks exploding. Hickam Field, Wheeler Field, Ford Island, all were engulfed in fire and chaos. The harbor became hell on earth. Ships ablaze, oil spilling across the water, flames dancing on black smoke. Sailors leapt into the water to escape the inferno, only to find the surface burning with fuel.
At 8:55 a.m., as smoke still poured into the sky, a second wave of Japanese aircraft swept in. Another 167 planes bore down on the crippled harbor. This time, resistance was stronger. American anti-aircraft guns blazed defiantly. Machine guns rattled from ships inshore. Pilots scrambled whatever plane survived the first assault. A handful of American fighters rose into the sky, engaging the Zeros in desperate dogfights. But the defenders were too few. More bombs rained down. More torpedoes struck. Battleships shuddered, flames roaring higher. Hangars collapsed in firestorms. Hospitals filled with the wounded, bloodied, and burned. For 2 hours, the sky over Oahu was filled with fire and fury. Civilians watched in horror from the hillsides, stunned as their island paradise turned into a war zone. By the time the last Japanese aircraft withdrew, the devastation was staggering. 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded, 8 battleships damaged or sunk, nearly 200 aircraft destroyed. The Pacific Fleet lay shattered.
At 10 a.m., the Japanese squadrons turned back toward their carriers. The mission was complete. In Tokyo, leaders would soon celebrate what they believed was a glorious triumph. They had struck the United States at its heart. But even in victory, there were flaws. The American aircraft carriers, Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga, were not in port that day. The oil storage tanks, submarine pens, and repair facilities remained untouched. In sparing these, Japan left the Pacific Fleet wounded, but not dead.
News of the attack spread like wildfire. Across the United States, radios crackled with disbelief. This is not a drill. Pearl Harbor has been attacked. Families wept. Anger ignited. The nation was stunned, but not broken. On December 8th, President Franklin D. Roosevelt stood before Congress. His voice, steady and resolute, echoed through history. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. In less than an hour, Congress voted overwhelmingly to declare war. America had entered World War II. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor was meant to break American resolve. Instead, it awakened a giant. Factories roared to life. Soldiers, sailors, and airmen enlisted by the millions. A tide of steel, ships, and determination rose from the ashes of the harbor. Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of the attack, would later lament, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." His words proved prophetic. From Midway to Guadalcanal, from the Philippines to Iwo Jima, American forces fought relentlessly across the Pacific. And 4 years later, it would be Japan that stood in ruins, compelled to surrender unconditionally. But it all began here, on that quiet Sunday morning, when the skies above Pearl Harbor darkened with fire. December 7th, 1941, a day of infamy, a day that changed the course of history.